What's up, guys and gals of the movement world? It's Sean Mishka, the Movement Miyagi, coming to you once again on behalf of Football Beyond the Stats and another movement skill short story this week for week 6 of the 2025 NFL season. And on today's play, we're going to look at George Pickens in the open field. A play that I feel represents something that we can do in our practice and learning environment really frequently in a really easy repetition without repetition fashion, where the problem and the solution both have tremendous variability to them, where no two movement problems are ever going to be the same, and neither are any two movement solutions. So let's get into it here and see what it is that George Pickens did on Sunday that I feel represents what more might be able to do. So again, like usual, let's watch it in fast speed here at real time, 100% speed. George Pickens on this intermediate to deep crosser. And then in the open field, kind of getting a little loose with the football, but hurdles a guy over on the sidelines. Let's watch it a couple more times through here before we get in on slow motion on this. And there's going to be a number of things that we're going to be able to look at, two slices in particular, that I feel as though we can have in our learning environment really frequently. And I hope you will feel the same. And I hope you will find that no matter the level of football that you coach and the level of players that you work with, it's something that you can represent and rep out. And when I say rep out, of course, I mean allow that problem to speak to the player with high variability and allow their solutions to be unfolding in a highly emergent fashion. So let's sort of pick up here where George Pickens, and now even though I put it in slow motion as Dak gets the ball, and again on this crosser, really what we would do in our learning environment, two slices that kind of combine to become one. We talk a lot in Enhancing Skill in American Football, the latest book that came out last month, myself, Tyler Yearby, Rob Gray, that if you haven't picked up, definitely do so. We have a number of things that we do within the book, both low complexity as well as in higher in complexity as we ramp up that complexity volume button. It changes the information. Let me show you a few things that we would be looking at here. The first thing would be this interaction that's unfolding right here, right? Wide receiver with a defensive back in a slight trail position, but tight on his hip. And this guy, this defensive back, could be positioned both on the outside hip or on the inside hip to start with. We could actually begin this local movement problem in this problem slice in sort of a way where, let's see if I could go probably from like the hashes here, the opposite wide field hatches, then down to the sideline down here for our workspace. So a pretty wide workspace. We will and have done it from this inside hash as well here. So we've done it both ways. We do it both ways. Again, repetition without repetition. What that means is we're going to repeat the process of solving the problem again and again by changing nuances of both the problem as well as the solution and the solution process. What one is perceiving, what one is cognizing, and how one is acting, right? So think about that with me if you would, and we will have this trailing defender to begin the rep. This quarterback likely wouldn't be this far downfield. We would usually put him about here, about 10, 12 yards away to ensure that the ball is going to be delivered accurately. And we want this to be contested as much as humanly possible. We don't want this player getting the ball when and if ever possible in an uncontested fashion, right? In this defender, it could be a defensive back as it is here, a corner, safety. It could be a linebacker as well, knowing actually how much they are expected to cover guys in space now, even slot guys and obviously running backs and tight ends and the like. Both of these guys can work on in a repetition without repetition fashion. Balls being delivered a little differently, balls being delivered in a different time, in a different place, and players will have to change how they are orienting their body. I would want number 8 here to explore tremendously, knowing that That local movement problem is important. I do want him to explore the ways to be able to get his hands on the ball, knock the ball down, tip it, grab it himself, put it back into play the other, going the opposite direction, so on and so forth, right? I want both parties to be able to explore accordingly here. And then once the ball is caught, and Pickens, one of the things I've seen from him here in Dallas in comparison to the way that he was in Pittsburgh, head is always scanning, head is always on a swivel, body is twisting and turning, looking for threats at all times. Now, again, like I said earlier, he might get a little loose with the football, but he also understands he doesn't feel a threat, a challenge, perturbation that is immediate and right there and present. He's able to get this head up and on a swivel to find that threat that we are referring to find what it is that might be coming into the space, right? No matter where it might be. Okay. Does that make some sense? I still have my double arrow on there, but you guys get the gist of it, right? And so now this would be another slice. We combine those two slices together. Okay. The ball being contested with a corner. It's a 1v2 in many of these cases. Here comes our second defender into the mix. Now, he was obviously a lot further upfield than that, which what we typically would have. Usually that player for us is probably entering from like the numbers here. Okay. So we give a more immediate threat as opposed to coming from this direction or where this guy is. Okay. Hopefully that makes some sense. And again, repetition without repetition. Problem variability also. Therefore, it will have context condition variability that how the problem is behaving will dramatically shape and channel the solution process. Okay. Now, in this 1v1 in space, when we really look at it, again, we talk a lot about what informational variables this guy here could be looking for. Okay. Now, he wants to look to and through. He needs to know what lies back here. Okay. What is back here? And I wanted to have a bubble there, but it's not going to really allow me to draw it that well. But what is back here behind this immediate defender that could serve to channel in a successive affordance type fashion how I might be able to behave right now? Because how I'm going to orient and organize my actions, how I'm going to coordinate my actions, will likely be dependent on what else is back behind us. So even though we see this crazy leaping athletic hurdle in the open field, look where George Pickens is looking, okay? Yes, he's already knowing that he has solved this respective problem accordingly, but he needs to look ahead for what might be coming next. And the more skillful movers are playing chess, not checkers. Remember that, right? So even when he's coming into this move, what move is executed? What opportunity to act is selected and acted upon if he has a jump cut here? Maybe he chooses to throw this left foot in the ground, right? And move from left to right in a power cut or speed cut type of fashion. Maybe if this guy stops his feet, he might look to spin from left to right and come back out of this direction. Maybe he would just throw this right foot in the ground out of that decel and come back in that direction. Rich landscape of affordances, aka opportunities to act even in this small slice or snippet. But what we see from George Pickens here, he knows that this guy is going low in shooting, so he shows off the athleticism and clears him with some distance, right? And then he comes down in a one-footed landing, and I want you to look where his head and neck goes immediately. Glance over the shoulder. Obviously, he has a helmet on, so there's only this much vista or vision to look at. So he has to turn the head to then look over his shoulder. He feels 56, but he's looking for additional threats there. So he knows how he needs to protect himself and how else he could act. A few things I will say here, going back to this. In our learning environment, typically guys aren't leaving their feet like this. Okay. And when we're doing this in a sparring, ownership speed, practice type of fashion, practice and training type of fashion, this defender could be approaching in that way. I want this offensive player to be attuned and sensitive to interpersonal distance, bearing angle, speeds, and velocities, but particularly in this situation, two informational variables that I believe are going to be highly informative to how else we could move, what lies to the left and the right and beyond. That's one. Okay, that's very layered, of course. But then also posture, kinematics. How is this guy positioned that affords me certain ways to act? Where can he go? How can he go there? And what does that mean for my own strategies and solution execution? And I have seen a hurdle like this emerge on a couple of cases, even though my guys aren't necessarily going to the ground like that in a tackle type of event. They're usually breaking down. They're usually stopping their feet. They're usually lowering their center of gravity, getting in a tackle ready position to tag off or at almost at maximum, maybe some thud tempo here, usually not going to the ground. But I have seen a hurdle emerge, but usually more likely it's going to be a spin cut, speed cut, power cut, something of that nature, right? But that novel and creative action emerges in context based on what's there. When that athlete, George Pickens in this case, is that attuned and that sensitive because he has felt that, experienced that, and have been immersed within it, we can expect him to have more access to these types of movement strategies and solutions to utilize when and where it counts, which is obviously on game day in competition. So for another movement skill short story at Football Beyond the Stats, I'm Sean Mishka, the Movement Miyagi. I will talk to you guys next time.